Chapter 9: Professionals and Practitioners in Communication Overview. This chapter discusses the roles and function of communicators and journalists, their areas of specialization, and the career they pursue. It also outlines the rights, responsibilities, and the accountabilities of communicators and journalists, and the code of ethics for communication practitioners, particularly that of journalists and broadcasters. This chapter will explain a lot of things about communicators and journalists. The knowledge that many people don't know will also be mentioned in this chapter. Ipapaliwanag ng kabanatang ito ang mga tungkol sa mga nakikipag-usap at mamamahayag. Ang kaalaman na hindi alam ng maraming tao tungkol sa kanila ay mababanggit din sa kabanatang ito. And now we're here at the discussion, roles and function of communicators and journalists. Letter A, fiscalizers. It is often said that people in government live in a fishbowl. Every action of public officials is seen by the people they serve. Thus, it is important that our society has fiscalizers, a role performed by communicators and journalists. As fiscalizers, communicators and journalists examine every government programs, analyze their pros and cons, and bring this to public attention. They also monitor the behavior of government officials and make sure that they adhere to RA 6713 or the Code of Conduct and Ethical Standards for public officials and employees. As fiscalizers and being part of the public servant, they have a big factor in the society, as they are the people behind some matters like criminal cases. They are the people who manage and regulate the cases, study the cases that people's appeal in court. Ang fiscalizer na bahagi ng pampublikong lingkod ay may malaking ambag sa lipunan. Ang mga tao sa likod ng iba't ibang usapin katulad ng kaso ng krimen. Ang mga taong namamahala o kumokontrol sa mga kaso. Ang nag-aaral sa mga kaso na inaapila ng mga tao sa korte. Letter B, mobilizers. As mobilizers, communicators and journalists bring people together for action. They persuade people to attend conventions, political rallies, concerns, and demonstrations, among other activities. A person who mobilizes a fearless orator. They are the mobilizers that assist community members in developing their capacity on pushing their skills. Ang mobilizer ay kumikilos bilang isang walang takot na tagapagsalita na tumutulong sa mga miyembro ng pamayanan na buuin ang kanilang sarili at kakayahan. Letter C, organizers. Communicators and journalists are good at organizing events. They search for the best venues, invite speakers, plan the program, and make sure there will be an audience. They are the person behind the events, whether it is big or small events. They are the person who makes sure that every detail of the event is in good state, from venue up to crowd or audience. Sila ang mga tao sa likod ng bawat pagtitipon, mapamalaki man ito o maliit na pagtitipon. Sila ang mga taong sumisigurado sa bawat detalye ng pagtitipon ay nasa mabuting estado, mula sa lugar hanggang sa madla. Letter D, opinion makers. Communicators and journalists often shape public opinion. They write columns and host public affairs programs to influence public opinion. Nowadays, another medium for shaping public opinions is social networking sites such as Facebook and Twitter. These are the person who express their personal opinion on something that can give information to others and also help other people to understand something they didn't know, especially when it's about on our country. They are the person who is blogger, journalist, and so many more. They are posting their sharings on their social media accounts, especially on Facebook and Twitter. Sila ang mga taong nagpapahayag ng kanilang pansariling opinyon sa isang bagay na maaaring makapagbigay ng impormasyon sa ibang tao. Sila rin ay maaaring makatulong sa ibang tao upang maintindihan ang mga bagay na hindi nila maintindihan, lalo na kung ito ba ay tungkol sa ating lipunan. Sila ang mga taong vlogger at namamamahayag at marami pang iba. Inilalagay nila ang kanilang pansariling opinyon sa iba't ibang social media account, lalong-lalo na sa Facebook at Twitter. Letter E, gatekeepers. As gatekeepers, communicators, and journalists select, change, and or reject messages from other people. They also influence the flow of information between a source and a group of receivers. Gatekeepers exist in all forms of mass media. For instance, publishing houses may select only 10 out of 100 manuscripts for further review. In the film industry, a review body can recommend deleting certain scenes from a movie. A screening body also reviews television shows before they air. People who are controlling the access from one point to another. They may refuse, control, delay the access of service. They may also oversee how work is being done, whether it meets the certain standards. Ang mga taong kumokontrol sa pag-access mula sa isang bagay patungo sa isa pa. Maaari nila itong tanggihan, kontrolin at maantala ang serbisyo. Maaari din nilang makita kung tama ba ang buong proseso ng kanilang trabaho at kung nakakamit ba nito ang pamantayan. Letter F, leaders. Communicators and journalists serve as leaders. They provide the vision for their governments and constituents. They get selected to both national and local positions. Voters may be owed not primarily by their platforms, but by their persuasive speaking skills. Their exposure in the mass media, especially radio, television, and print, also works to their advantage. Leader is not just a leader, like communicators and journalists. Leader who influence a group of people to achieve their goals. Main purpose of leader is to lead or guide people on what should be done. Leader is an inspiration and motivator. Ang namumuno ay hindi lamang basta namumuno, tulad ng isang tagapagsalita at mamamahayag. Sila ay impluwensya sa isang pangkat ng tao upang makamit ang kanilang layunin. Sila ang gumagabay sa mga tao upang malaman kung ano ba ang mga dapat gawin. Letter G, managers. Communicators and journalists make good managers because of their background in planning, organizing, directing, coordinating, and reporting. Some even manage businesses and television or radio programs. As managers, communicators, and journalists handle a nitty-gritty of administrative and operational work. Manager is expert on handling business and supporting his or her employees. Also, manager has good communication skills that communicators and journalists also have. Ito ay taong dalubhasa sa negosyo at kayang suportahan ang kanyang mga empleyado. Siya ay magaling magsalita tulad ng isang mamamahayag. Letter H, propagandist. Communicators and journalists did propaganda work for candidates in both government and private sector positions. In addition, communicators and journalists are found in progressive groups where they campaign for advocacies. They promote a particular organization. They gather information and testimonials that they can use for advertisement, or depends on what organization they are promoting. Sila ay isang partikular na samahan o organisasyon na nangangalap ng impormasyon at mga testimonyal na maaari nilang magamit sa kanilang advertismo o depende sa kanilang organisasyon na isinusulong. Letter I, policy advocates. Training in journalism or in broadcasting also makes communicator and journalists good policy advocates. They are usually hired by lobby groups to advocate their policy proposal and recommendations. It has different varieties of activities. This can be related to policies or influencing, how other people want to make influence, or how other people use their influence. Ito ay may iba't ibang aktibidad na maaaring maiugnay sa patakaran o nakakaimpluwensya. Ito ay kung paano gawin ang impluwensya o kung paano gamitin ang impluwensya.
Reformers, communicators, and journalists play the role of reformers or change agents in both public and private organization. Ito ay ginagampanan ng mga tagabalita kung ano ang pagbabagong nangyayari. Advertisers. As advertisers, communicators and journalists persuade people to buy and continue patronizing a certain product. They create radio, television, and online advertisement geared toward audiences. They also use print media, particularly newspapers and billboards, to promote products and services. Ito ay para tangkilikin ng mga mamimili ang produkto at para himukin ang mga tao na bumili ng kanilang produkto. Gumagawa sila ng mga palabas para hikayatin ang tao na bumili. Public Relation Officers. As public relation officers, communicators and journalists are concerned with promoting the image on an organization or company. It is considered a more subtle form of advertising, designed to influence attitudes and beliefs. Public relations officers work with corporations, non-governmental organizations, public officials, and actor and actresses. Ito ay isa ring advertising para maimpluwensyahan ang mga paniniwala at saloobin, ang mga tao at nakikipagtulungan ang opisyal na relasyon sa publiko, sa mga hindi pang gobyerno gaya ng mga artista. Researchers, media organizations, universities, private corporation, and non-government organization employ communicators and journalists as researcher. In media organizations, communicators and journalists conduct regular research to find out and know more about topics and issues. They will feature or report on and determine the public perceptions of their programs. Ito ay isang pananaliksik para sa mga tagapagbalita, para makakalap o malaman ang impormasyon tungkol sa mga isyu na itatampok nila o ilalahad nila at para matukoy ang pananaw ng publiko sa kanilang programa. Broadcast communication. It involves providing the public with information through venues other than print media. Broadcast communication graduates are usually employed in radio station, television networks, or private organizations. They are also found in public information agency. Broadcast communication graduates pursue careers as radio or television broadcasters, commentators or analysts in public affairs programs, hosts of variety travel and talk shows, and field reporters. They may also teach mass communication, English, or speech in school, colleges, and universities. Ito ay nagbibigay ng impormasyon sa publiko tulad sa mga telebisyon, radyo, sila yung mga nagbabalita sa mga tao. Journalism. It involves in providing the public with information through print media. It aims to inform the public of what is going on in society and help them critically make decisions and create positive changes in their lives and communities. Graduates journalism usually work in newspaper companies and publishing houses. They become newspaper columnists and reporters, authors, and editors of book and journalists. Ito ay isang journal na nilalayon na ipaalam sa publiko ang nangyayari sa lipunan at tulungan sila para makagawa ng desisyon sa kanilang buhay at gumawa ng pagbabago sa kanilang buhay. Filmmaking. It is the process of producing and directing motion pictures. In filmmaking, communicators and journalists become involved in story planning, budgeting, casting, shooting, sound recording, and editing, and finalizing the film. When making films, communicator and journalists deal with a range of economic, social, and political topics. Ito ay isang proseso sa paggawa ng mga pelikula para maging maayos ang kalalabasan ng pelikula na gagawin. Dapat ay nasa plano ang paggawa ng kwento. Maayos ang eksena at ang pag-e-edit. Advertising. It involves selling a certain product or service to target consumers. Communicators and journalists working in this area pursue career as writers, editors, artist-producers, production assistants, marketing strategists, and salesperson. Ito ay pagbebenta ng isang tiyak na produkto o serbisyo upang matarget ang mga mamimili. Public relations. It aims to create a positive image for a company or an organization. Communicators and journalists help organizations and public figures introduce themselves and project a positive image to the public through the news media. Using this medium is often cheaper than advertisement. Communicators and journalists also help government agencies perform public relations work for their programs and projects. They work as information officers, public relation officers, writers, editors, web administrators, photojournalists, and spokesperson. Nilalayon nitong lumikha ng isang positibong imahe para sa isang kumpanya o isang samahan. Pinapakilala nila ang kanilang sarili sa positibong paraan. At kumakalat sila ng impormasyon sa pagitan ng isang samahan o individual.
Theater arts. It involves live performances of actors or actresses portraying a sequence of scenes to tell a story, to be witnessed by a live audience. Performance in a theater utilize gestures, while many communication professionals work in theater as actors or actresses. There are also those who work as directors, producers, production assistants, writers, scriptwriters, editors, and financial managers. Generally, theater arts is considered acting only, but that's not true. Theater art is a vast subject. It comprises of writing, scripting, editing, translating, adapting, set designing, lighting, sound recording, sound playing, dancing, singing, instrument playing, costume design, makeup, producing, directing, marketing, coordinating, educating, entertaining, and of course, acting. Interesting thing is that there is scope for each and every art form and creativity in theater. Theater itself is a complete life. Communication research. It uses both qualitative and quantitative method form of the social science to study the process, function, and effects of communicative phenomena. Since work in this area also entails researching on the background of people and places, as well as current issues, its practice can be integrated with the other previously discussed areas. For me, communication research is considered with identifying and exploring and measuring factors that surround communication in other form of regarding in any topic, often from a theory-driven perspective, but increasingly with empirically grounded methods. Right responsibilities and accountabilities of communicators and journalists. One of the basic rights of communicators and journalists is freedom of speech, which encompasses not only spoken but only written expressions of one's thoughts and ideas. There are a few provisions in the Constitution which protect this basic freedom. One of these in Section 4 of Article 3, or the Bill of Rights. It states the people have the right to freely express their thoughts or speak out about issues in the government. They can do so through utilizing media outlets and participating in peacefully mobilization and protest. However, no freedom is absolute, and this means that communicators and journalists must observe certain responsibilities as well. Restraint is one of the primary responsibilities and accountabilities of communication and journalists. It should always their primary consideration. They should also consider prudence of choosing one's word carefully in both oral and written communication. This entails respect of the part of communicators and journalists toward the people. They interact with such as authorities and the elderly. This also means the full or offensive language should always be avoided to avoid charges of libel and slander. Libel is defamation using written or printed word, while slander is oral defamation. The right information to freedom of expression and criticism is one of the fundamental rights of man. All rights and duties of journalists originate from this right of public to be informed on events and opinions. Journalists claim free access to all information sources and the rights of freely inquire on all events conditioning public life. Therefore, secret of public or private affairs may be opposite only to journalists and exceptional cases and for clearly expressed motives.
Method: communicators and journalists may be tempted to conduct ambush interviews and engage in dissipation of similarity practice to obtain information. In my opinion, according to this, communicator and journalist will do anything to get informed, even in purpose is to catch the interview off guard of information. Level of publicity: communicators and journalists need to observe limits in promoting transparency and awareness. There must be continuous when it's come to reporting on certain matters such as sexual life of a politician or a public figure reporting may be disabled for some people. In my opinion, a speaker need to be inquisitive and curious about the matter so what we can protect people from the news that will be said about and will not know and dignity. Truthness. Journalists must emphasize and sensationary information in their report and prevent twisting the fact of serving their own objective or those on an organization. They also need to correct errors in their reporting immediately. For my statement, they need to act on something that the speaker is making mistake so that the ready made and quick action will be not repeated and the news reporter will be pay attention. Decency, integrity, and dignity. Journalists must avoid offending others when reporting or gathering information. Decency, integrity, and dignity must also be reflected in the tax that journalists accept. Journalists must avoid accepting tax they know will be violate their consciences. For my opinion, they do not avoid the possibility. They know I will be included in the everything they say to the people, and they should be a good example, especially to children, and make every statement for everyone to learn. Fairness, honesty, and originality when gathering and presenting information. Journalists need to consider and side up in issues. They should avoid catering to the interests or those or specific person or organization. In addition, then should clearly state they represent in media organization where they want to conduct interview or gather information. Lastly, journalists must avoid plagiarism. For my statement, they should do not write and correct what they say and not exchange their dignity and business were to be fair to people and not be tempted by money and tell the truth based on the news. Announcer, there go right. Decency, integrity, and dignity. Journalists must avoid offending others when reporting or gathering information. Decency, integrity, and dignity must also be reflected in the tax that journalists accept. Journalists must avoid accepting tax they know will be violate their consciences. For my opinion, they do not avoid the possibility. They know I will be included in the everything they say to the people, and they should be a good example, especially to children, and make every statement for everyone to learn. Cautious journalists should be cautious when the information they release. For example, they must be careful in stating the names of the women and minors involved in crime. They must also take note a person causing a crime in an innocent until proven guilty. For me, it will take a journalist to carefully review every news release as not to be harmed or so as not to embrace the victim, especially if it has no offense. An announcer should remember the dignity and know the truth carefully before releasing into news. Purifying the truth. Journalists must ensure accuracy in the information they report. They should be objective and honest in both gathering and presenting information. Pursuing the truth also entails proving the less powerful a way to speak out agent problem in a government society. As a citizen, the speaker must emphasize and the news to be told accurate in the order to be a safety to whoever the speaker is referring to and to be a courtesiness in the step to the taking the news to be made. Upholding transparency. Journalists must inform the audience or their source to agents the trust. They must also transparent about their mistake in a correct aim. Immediately, finally, the audience should be aware of their report points on their approach in of reporting information doing to well let the certain audience do know example a certain topic was used in another. This means that journalists inform the public their information or truthfully sourced to again to trust of the readers. And to serve the true and adventure news, they should be transparent in a very case and in their always see everyday perspective, not basing on a stature, race, and a gender, and they are no responsibility for mistake and correct them properly admitting their wrong. Finally, the public should be aware their point of view and their approach to reporting information doing well let an especially audience to know why. For example, one specific topic indicates instead of others.
Serving the community as their ultimate goal, journalists should be aware of the needs of the community and constantly collaborate with its members. Doing so can help journalists gather and report information without harming or offending them. Journalists must also practice compassion and empathy and avoid serving the interests of private corporations that empower communities. Finally, journalists should encourage the members of the community to seek and report information themselves. They should collaborate not only with journalists themselves, but with one another. Their goal is to provide the needs of the citizens, and they must collaborate with its members so that it can help the journalists to gather and report information without offending them. And they must encourage the citizens to report some information themselves, and because of that, mas mapapadali yung pag-gather nila ng information. The Code of Ethics for Broadcasters. The Kapisanan ng mga Broadcaster ng Pilipinas, or the KBP, is a non-government, non-profit organization for broadcast media practitioners in the Philippines. It aims to provide the practice of broadcasting in the Philippines and to develop broadcast media as catalysts for social change. KBP is a broadcast media organization which provides its members broadcasting standards in order to promote professional and ethical standards in the Philippine broadcasting in both radio and television. The following are some of the major elements of KBP's choice of ethics. News and public affairs. It should be informative, fair, and objective. The information cited in these programs need to come from credible sources. The news should be fair and unbiased. And also, the information that they gather must be true and come from the reliable sources. Culture and tradition. Broadcasters and communicators should uphold Filipino values such as helpfulness and familial ties. Broadcast programs must also demonstrate respect for traditions and customs of all individuals. Culture reflects the moral and ethical beliefs that speak to how people should behave and interact with others. So, broadcasters must show respect to all individuals. National development and citizen welfare and involvement. Broadcasters must take public service announcement and provide a chance for people to express their complaints about crimes or ineffective government services. Broadcasters must also air programs that can help improve the well-being of citizens, including educational shows and programs that teach children positive values. Public service announcement is meant to raise the audience awareness about an important issue for people to express their opinions or complaints about an important issue, and also the broadcasters must have a program where it can help to improve all individuals. Accuracy and reliability. Information given in television programs must be thoroughly reviewed and should come from reliable sources. This does not only apply to news programs but also to programs that provide legal and medical advice. It is where the information stated in the television is accurate and reliable. And also, hindi lang po siya applicable sa mga news program, but also to programs that provide legal and medical advice. Upholding human rights and dignity. Broadcasters must avoid discriminatory behavior and making personal attacks on other people. They must also be cautious in obtaining information from people who face emotional issues or need privacy. In addition, broadcasters should refrain from embarrassing or mocking people with mental or physical disabilities. All human beings are born free and equal dignity and rights, so the broadcaster should avoid discrimination and personal attacks on people. Decorum and respect for the law. Broadcasters must behave and be dressed appropriately according to the norms observed by people viewing the program. Broadcast programs must also be free of obscenity in language, the explicit depiction of sexual acts, and encouragement of delinquent and violent behavior. In addition, broadcasters must refrain from promoting or encouraging acts that may result in civil disorder, including large-scale and violent rebellion. Broadcasters must respect the laws and must be dressed appropriately according to the standard observed by people. Also, they must stop themselves saying or promoting appropriate acts that can cause violence. Qualifications and competence. Broadcasters are expected to possess the necessary qualifications and competence to perform their duties. They must be aware of both their professional and ethical responsibilities to the public and to everyone they work with. Broadcasters must be aware of their profession and responsibilities to the public.